Raj, I was thinking about you this morning and I was thinking about how we met. And I was thinking about the power of the rooms that you stand in. We met through the World Happiness Summit last year, which y'all please check out. It's a group of amazing humans. And I got to tell you what, Raj, and I didn't share this with you. I almost didn't go because when I was invited, I thought to myself, you know what? There's going to be all these amazing people in the room. Who am I to be in the room? I got to travel to London. And it just made me think about these opportunities that we miss out of because of this social anxiety, the narrative in here. What does that mean to you, the power of the rooms you stand in?
Well, it's the power of unanticipated encounters, collisions, um, things that you cannot plan, uh,
Mm,
synchronicities that really shape most of life, I think.
mm,
Almost everything significant that has happened in my life, and I think many people identify with this, it's not because of some planned process of, knowing exactly what you want and how to get it. It's being in the right place at the right time and then seeing an opportunity and a door open and walking through it. The life-changing moments, I think, happen in that way.
mm.
That's how for me. So I think showing up for many things, and I think trusting your initial instinctive response. Your body has wisdom that your mind may not. And if your body responds to an idea or a thought in a certain way, if you get chills, if you get, goosebumps, or if you get tears, I mean, those are all signals that something really matters, that your body wisdom is speaking to you. So I think we learn to pay attention to that. Our intuition is something we don't quite understand, but I think honoring that and showing up and being open to synchronicities.
I got to tell you what, we are a minute into this and you are taking me to church already. I understand why they call you the intellectual shaman because yes, it's so powerful. And I want to ask you, Raj, so I was in corporate America for 15 years, grew up in this space. And I was so head down in all of the things because achieving was my drug of choice. I will get whatever you need across the finish line. I'll do it however you want, sacrificing myself for it. And I was never aware to even hear myself in this loud world or the power of unscriptedness. What is your recommendation to our tribe, to the listener right now, that like the world is loud, there's a lot going on? How can they create space to hear themselves or lean into these moments? Any recommendations that you have?
Well, I think you have to, as you engage with the outside world, you also have to be continuously in dialogue with your inner world.
Mm,
And you have to, first of all, know who you are, know what matters to you, right? What defines you, and stay true to yourself, even as you engage with the outside world. So if you can stay connected to your core being and be able to listen to your heart as you're doing outside things, I think then you will be guided in the right ways. If you lose yourself in pursuit of external goals and objects and somebody else's definition of success and so forth, then you're going to look back and say, wow, well, what did I do and where did all that time go? And I ended up pleasing others, but never really figuring out what matters to me. And so I think that is something, it took me a long time. I was, like many of us, driven by the external things because you don't really know. Over time, I think if you stay connected to yourself, then you're able to figure out, the way that the framing I use is from Andrew Harvey, that you listen to your heart and you follow your heartbreak until you discover your bliss,
mm,
right? So follow your heartbreak, what gives you pain that other people don't care about. And then at some point you will discover your bliss on the other side of that heartbreak, which is Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss. And for me, that was how my purpose came to me.
mhm.
I was connected to things that I knew did not resonate with me. And I was following my heartbreak to say these are the things in the world of business that I think cause great suffering, and there must be a better way. And then ultimately, I did find that better way by writing the book Films of Endearment. And along the process of writing that book, I was moved to tears. at the deep humanity that could exist in these companies. And I
Mm.
said, I know what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I found my bliss on the other side of that heartbreak. But for either of those things to happen, you have to stay connected to your heart. I find the world of work in general and business especially is all about the head and the wallet, and we forget the heart and the spirit and soul. We neglect that, right? We don't engage that in our work lives, and that makes for a very barren kind of experience of life, very dehumanized.
Mm.
So I was, without even knowing it, I was searching for that heart and spirit. I was never inspired in my business education, uh, and I was never emotionally moved. And now I found myself both inspired and moved. I was in tears, and I was tremendously inspired by what is possible when we think about business in a different way. So I think that is what I would say: stay connected to your heart and know who you are.
I have to tell you, Raj, hell to the yes. I wish that someone would have spoken to me about this in all of my years growing up through the corporate ranks. I told you before we hit record that as I sat in that room with you at the World Happiness Summit and heard you speak about purpose in business, about the heart in business, I was coming up through the ranks. So many of us were and are, continue to be, that it's about these key performance indicators and what's that profit line, what's the P&L line. And as you described this emotional movement, this heart, this passion, this intentionality around all facets of stakeholders and humans in the business, it just had me salivating. Share with our tribe what conscious capitalism is, this beautiful community and movement that you've built.
Yeah, so conscious capitalism is a movement that I started with John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, uh, in 2008. So I met John in 2007, and I met him because I had just finished a book called Firms of Endearment that was published in 2007. How world-class companies profit from passion and purpose. And that was the book, as I said earlier, that changed my life, because until then, for 20 years, I had been a frustrated and uninspired business professor teaching things that I really didn't believe in so much. And, there was the prose of business, but I was missing the poetry of business, the beauty
Mm.
of. And in the process of writing that book, which actually arose out of my frustration with business as usual, I was asking, is there a better way to think about business and especially marketing, which was my PhD in marketing and strategy? And I said, wow, we spend a lot of money on this stuff. In the US, we were spending in 2004 $1 trillion. Let's think about that. $1 trillion on ads, coupons, and junk mail. At a time when the GDP of India, where I come from, was $700 billion. So I said, here are 1 billion people living on $700 billion. And here we are spending $1 trillion on ads, coupons, and junk mail for 300 million people. Right? What are we getting for that?
Mm.
And all my research said for customers, for companies, and society, we're actually not getting much. In fact, we're having many negative consequences of that. People are over consuming, they're subscribing to false values. We got obesity and diabetes and eating disorders and body dysmorphia and depression. We use women's bodies to sell products, and what does that do to young women? We're selling junk food and getting kids addicted for a lifetime on terrible things, etc. I said, there's a lot of, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of exploitation. We're not serving each other, we're using each other. It's like
Mm.
the world of business. And so it's not good for customers, not good for companies, and not good for society. We're creating this unhealthy culture. And so my question was, is there a better way? Is there a better way to do business? Is there a better way to do marketing? Is there companies that you don't have to spend all this money on ads and coupons, and yet customers love these companies? Are there such companies out there? And with that lens, I started to find companies and ultimately found 28 of them, which were loved not only by customers, but also by employees and suppliers and communities and so forth. And so they were stakeholder oriented, right? Not just customer focused. And then I discovered what makes that happen, is a sense of purpose and sense of values
Mm.
that attracts the right stakeholders to you. You don't have to go out there and bribe them and, browbeat them into becoming your customers or employees. They are drawn to you because they resonate with your values and purpose, right? And so I discovered the pillars of conscious capitalism by asking the simple question, which companies are loved by people, and why? And what makes them loved is they have purpose. It's like what makes a human being loved. You're somebody who knows who you are and what you're trying to do in this life, and you have values, right? And they care for all their stakeholders, and they have leaders who are aligned with serving the people and the purpose. They're not just about power and money and ego.
Mhm.
And they have cultures where people actually love going to work. It's not just you say, thank God it's Friday and I can go and get drunk and forget my worries for a weekend. You know, then I come back on Monday, and then we learn that heart attacks are 20% higher on Mondays.
Mm, mm,
It's 4 a.m. Monday morning is the peak of heart attacks. So I discovered the antidote, or the opposite, the alternative story of business, rooted in love and purpose and meaning, and hence the book Forms of Endearment, the title. And as I said, my body told me all I needed to know. The fact that I was moved to tears. Tears of joy is a rare thing in this world.
mhm,
Tears of
mhm,
joy, well, maybe when you have a baby or something, but tears of joy connected to work. It's like, wow, you found the Holy Grail here. So we should all be in search of that. And that told me, in that instant, I felt like my purpose landed on me like a butterfly. It's like, okay, here you are. This is, here are your instructions for the rest of your life. I want to dedicate the rest of my life to this. And so I had that clear vision of what I wanted to create, called the Institute for New Capitalism, or INC. INC. I make acronyms out of everything. And then John Mackey invited me to spend a day with him because Whole Foods was one of those 28 companies that I had written about. And he read the book and loved it and asked me to come and spend a day. And when I did, and I shared that mind map with him, I said, John, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. He said, well, that's my vision as well, but I like the phrase conscious capitalism. And so that's how we, in October of 2007, decided, okay, let's try to launch something. So February of 2008, we had a retreat at John's Ranch outside of Austin. And then October of that year, we had our first conference. And it was the most incredible 3 days of my life, that particular event. So that was the beginning. That's how we launched it. 2008, we wrote that book in 2013, the Conscious Capitalism book. And now we're about, 16 years on. And, we're in about 25 US cities where we have chapters, about 15 other countries. And, it's changing the dialogue around business. More and more people are talking about either conscious capitalism, or they're talking about stakeholder capitalism, or purpose-driven capitalism, or business. These ideas are becoming now understood
mm,
and increasingly embraced. We're not there yet fully. We're still not at the tipping point where this becomes the default setting and not an alternative setting. But I think we're getting there. I suspect in the next 5 years, if we keep on this journey, that we will in fact change the dominant paradigm
mm,
that people subscribe to, because we all grew up with this narrow, uninspiring view business only exists to make money. It's like a mercenary operation. It's just about money. People don't matter, planet doesn't matter, or they only matter if they can help you make more money. Is we act like money is the only game in town. There are many games in town. Okay.
mhm.
Money is one of them, but it matters how you make the money, and matters what you do with the money. And so all we have to bring all of that into business.
Raj, as you're talking about purpose, and I loved when you said, well, I loved a lot about what you said, but I loved what you talked about the butterfly. I was like a little butterfly that just landed on your shoulder. And I think about the power of these little whispers. And in our world where we want it now. We think that everything should be Amazoned on our front porch in 48 hours, that we look so hard for it. I did for a very long time. What's my purpose? What am I meant to do? What's the next thing? And for me, it showed up in thinking it was supposed to be this career growth, this promotion. And that wasn't it. That wasn't it. And so I would love to ask you, for our listener that is trying to find their purpose, or says, you know what, Raj, I love that you, Meg, found your purpose. How the hell do I find mine? What's your
Yeah.
recommendation to them?
Yeah, as I think about purpose, I think there are three pathways to purpose. One
Mm,
is sort of an intellectual exercise. You've probably seen the Ikigai framework from Japan, right? Those four overlapping circles,
Yeah.
right? What I love to do, what I'm good at, what the world needs, and what I can get paid for. And you look at the intersections of all those things. So that is kind of an intellectual exercise. You can go through that and start to narrow down. I think that has value. That's not how I did it. I didn't even know about that framework until later. But certainly I think for some people that is helpful. It starts to get them thinking along those lines. Then there's the spiritual. For some
Mm.
people, especially those who are religious, purpose is a calling. They hear a message from God, and this is what you're meant to do. So I've met people like that. The highest selling book of the last century probably is The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren.
Mm.
He's a pastor in Scottsdale, Arizona. And that's very much coming at it from a religious perspective, right? That each of us is sent here with a purpose. Um, but the third one is the one that I had, which is experiential.
Mm-hmm.
That you go through life, you know what you resonate with and you know what you don't resonate with. As long as I said, you haven't lost connection to your being, your heart, right? Stay true to who you are. Don't become somebody who you're not, right? So stay true to who you are and then experience life. And as I said, follow your heartbreak.
Yeah.
What gives you pain when other people don't care? I
Mm-hmm.
saw all of these things in my PhD program, as the negative consequences of the way we did marketing and all the aggressive stuff. And my colleagues didn't care, my professors didn't care, but I did. And even though I didn't pursue it right away, but I knew that I cared. Right? So you have to stay connected to your heart and experience life and recognize what matters to you, what sources of suffering in the world that
Mm-hmm.
resonate with you that you need to do something about. And then ultimately you stay on that path until you find the solution or the answer, which is finding your bliss, which is Joseph Campbell, right? So to me, experientially, I think that's one way that can work. That's how it happened for me. But I recognize those other ways as well. I think when I was growing up, the word purpose didn't exist in the lexicon, really. Most people never talked about your purpose. Growing up in India in the 70s, your purpose was to survive. Your purpose was
Mm-hmm.
to figure out how you're going to earn a living. That was purpose enough. I think it's something now that we recognize a real human craving.
Mm-hmm.
But if your survival needs are not met, then purpose becomes a luxury. You've got to survive before you can do anything else. I think more and more of us now are in that position of being able to think about that. And so, yeah, I think that is for my children and their generation, thinking about that at an early age. For me, I was almost 50 by the time I connected to my purpose. And that's maybe you could say that's how my life was meant to unfold. I needed to learn a lot of things. And when I was ready, because I wouldn't be ready at 25 to take on this purpose, to bring heart, healing, courage, soul, and awakening to business and leadership so that we can build a better world for all. Well, what did I know at 25, 30, even 40? I had to go through the you have to go through the suffering in order to come out a wounded healer, right?
Mm.
And be able to actually help. So yeah, but I think being being in that dialogue with yourself and having that awareness about it, I think will guide you towards your purpose sooner rather than later.
Man, you had me at wounded healer. We should put that on a bumper sticker, t-shirt, hats. I feel all that, the power and the lessons that you learn through the journey. Raj, you talked about growing up in the survival mode. And God, I feel that. Like it's so funny. You can spend your whole life running from yourself, can't you?
Oh yeah, sure. Oh, I did for decades. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because it's one thing to know yourself. So I have a book I'm working on now called The 7 Steps to Recovery of Self. It's called Healing Leaders, and it's these steps that came to me in a silent retreat in 2018. And it starts with know yourself. You have to know who you are, what makes you tick, what makes you unique. There have been, by some measures, 117 billion human beings on this planet. Right? 8 billion are here today, 112, 109 have died before, 109 billion. But every one of us is unique, right? And we have to understand that uniqueness about ourselves. So who am I? What makes me tick? What are my values? What are my core qualities? And then you have to love yourself. And that's not automatic.
Mm-mm.
To the extent, I mean, most people, I would say, probably hate themselves. Most people do not love themselves, right? They have all this negative self-talk and they're, incredibly critical of their own beings. And that was true for me for decades. Partly because it's the messaging you get from your parents, right? So I had a mother who loved me unconditionally, but a father who was very critical. My father who I didn't know until I was 7 years old.
Mm.
He had gone away to Canada to get his PhD. So my first memory is when he came back to India when I was 7. And he was the opposite of me in many ways, in terms of his being, right? We come from this warrior caste in India, so he was very much an embodiment of that energy, the hyper patriarchal, feudal, hyper masculine type of domineering energy. I was much more like my mother. And so he saw me as a bundle of defects. He
Mm.
said, "Oh, you're too trusting, you're too harmony seeking, you need to be rough and tough, you shouldn't trust anybody, you're too idealistic, you need to be pragmatic." So I was too this, that, I need to be the opposite. And so I came to see myself as that, as the opposite of what I need to be, right? And I was in opposition to myself,
Mm.
trying to be the opposite of who I was for decades, just to win his approval, and he was in a way representing what the world needs or wants. So that's what I thought. That's what my father is saying. And so that took me a long time to get over that self-hatred and ultimately to self-acceptance
Mm.
and then ultimately to self-love, because you start to at some point recognize that those are actually my gifts. That's what I'm meant to bring into it, right? That those qualities which I'm trying to suppress are actually what I need to embrace and then
Mm.
cultivate. The world has enough of the other stuff. We need more trust. We need more harmony. We need more caring. All of that, right? And a coach in 2018 really crystallized it for me when she heard the story of my life, how my work had evolved, and where I come from, and my relationship with my father, and all of that. And she said, "You realize that you spent the first 45 years of your life trying to impress your father, right? By being worldly and being, doing all the things that he defined as success. And now you spend the last 15 years honoring your mother with your work. That everything, starting with forms of endearment, conscious capitalism, the healing organization, everybody matters, Shakti leadership, all of this is really bringing my mother's energy into the world of business and leadership,
Mm.
right? Where it is sorely lacking. The world has enough of my father's energy, dominant, aggressive, win at all costs, etc., etc. And so that was a clarifying moment to say, yeah, that is in a way what. And I know I kind of rejected that for a long time, but with forms of endearment, I then leaned into it without even realizing that that's what I was doing. I came alive because now I was connected to who I am,
Mm.
right? In my work, suddenly my heart was opened up into my work. And then I started to have an impact, not only personally fulfilling, but having an impact on the world. Because now I was resonating with the right frequency that I was designed for, right? So I think those are lessons that it took me a long time to learn, but I had to go through a lot of stuff. As I said, you don't build resilience by having an easy life,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
You don't acquire wisdom by having smooth sailing and everything. So going through all the obstacles and having all of that. So one realization I also had that year, that I had to experience in my childhood the worst of the hyper masculine, patriarchal, feudal, dominant culture that existed in my family and in India, in the warrior caste. I had to experience all of that abuse, etc., in order to be sensitized to the need for the feminine, so that I would write about a book about the feminine 55 years later, right? Or 50 years later. So again, everything starts to make sense in your life. Even the worst things, that the so-called worst things that happened to you, actually had a gift, wrapped up inside them.
Mm.
If you had the ability to see it,
Mm.
it takes time to be able to see that. Which is why in my 7 steps I have know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, right? Lean into who you are, be a whole amplified version of that. Choose your life. Everything that happened to you, whether good or supposedly good or bad, all the difficult people in your life, my father, many, Choose that, because that's what shaped you to what you needed to become. The
Mm,
experiences that you would not wish upon your worst enemy, you would say, I choose it. I can't go back and change it, but I choose it. I embrace it. I'm grateful for it because it gave me the gift of whatever insights, right? And then express yourself, follow your hero's journey, your path in this lifetime, what you're meant to do, and you're the gift that you came here, born into this world with. And then become whole, which is the journey towards integrating your masculine and feminine within yourself.
mm,
Doesn't matter what gender you are. We all have, as Carl Jung said, every man has an inner woman, every woman has an inner man. Can you integrate those and become a whole person? And we go beyond masculine, feminine to the elder and child energy as well. The wisdom of the elder and the innocence and playfulness and joy and creativity of the child, all that's inside you. But we have suppressed it. We have a wounded child, right? So we don't have access to joy and creativity. So how can you cultivate the healthy versions of all four of those and become what I call the wise fool of tough love?
mm,
Wisdom of the elder, the playfulness, joy, ease of the child, right? The toughness of the strong father, and the unconditional love of the mother, all within you. And you can manifest that into the world. And then the seventh and final step is heal yourself. We all carry wounds. We all have trauma, right? 13 million Americans have PTSD, but I believe all of us on this planet, all human beings, have trauma because life is hard. Even being born is traumatic. Okay, and then there's personal trauma, things that happen to you. There's family trauma, things that happened before you were born. You didn't experience it directly,
mm,
but you were born into that energetic system. There's ancestral trauma, things that happened generations ago. You are still being impacted through epigenetics, right? A lot of interesting research on that. And then there's a collective trauma of what's happening in our world,
mm,
right? Climate change, the pandemic, and all kinds of things. And so that's a lot of trauma. And most of us are in denial. We minimize it. We say, I didn't go to Afghanistan or Iraq. What right do I have to whine about my little problems? Right? But the fact is, all of us have it. We have to, it's post-traumatic stress injury, not be PTSD, but we have to, if we don't acknowledge it, we can never heal it. And if we don't heal it, then we'll walk through the world in that wounded state and we will create a lot of suffering for ourselves and others. If we can, as we say, you have to reveal it and feel it in order to heal it.
mm,
Once you heal it, you can experience post-traumatic growth. You can then become the source of healing for others. It's like that Japanese metaphor you may have seen called kintsugi. When a piece of pottery breaks, they don't throw it away. They put it back together using gold dust and glue, right? A mixture of gold dust and glue. So now it's a work of art. And it is stronger than the original piece
mm,
because you have strengthened it along its fault lines. And that's what we become. Once we heal, those wounds are our precious scars. And now we are the source of comfort and healing in the
mm.
world. So that's kind of the journey that I have figured out, in my lived experience. And as I said, it came to me in a silent retreat. So I believe there's some divine intervention there.
Raj, as you're talking, God, so many things. Um, I want to talk to you about the power of silence because I truly believe in this loud world where we have our phones by us at all times. I was just reading the other week that there's research that shows we spend an average of 20 years of our life just doing this, just hitting the scroll
Oh
on.
my God.
Isn't that crazy? And as we want to numb from all the things when we're uncomfortable, whether that's the food, the booze, the emails, the things, the power in these micro moments of silence I have found. And I love when you said it was really all of this came to me in this silent retreat. How do you think we can create more moments for silence in our busy
Yeah.
world?
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a powerful thing. If your listeners have not experienced that, I urge them to make space for silence because, as you said, we live in such a world of constant bombardment.
Mhm.
Everything is seeking our attention. In a world of too much attention or too much information, what's lacking then is our ability to give attention because information consumes attention. There's too much information, we have no attention left for what really matters. And so carving out time for that, this retreat I went to was a 3 day, it's a 4 day thing, but 3 of those days were in silence.
Mm.
And it's in collective silence, which has a power of its own. There were 35 of us there in a place called Peace Village in upstate New York. And there were people like Peter Senge and David Cooper Ryder and many others there who are some of my also intellectual shamans, as you talked about. Some of them are in that book, you know. And it was a beautiful experience to be in nature and to be in silence. And when you do that, some channel opens up. The sort of you get connected to source and you start receiving wisdom, right, from within yourself or from source, wherever, but not from your mind, but from somewhere else. And yeah, that doesn't happen if you're not in that place of silence. So I think making time for that, even I urge my students during I teach a course on conscious leadership, just to set aside a day this semester, where you're going to be in silence, you know, or if we can do an hour of your day, during the day, which, that could be a kind of meditation as well. But I think that's an important thing to cultivate. Um, so that was one of the things that I did. So, a lot of these things happened in 2018. So that was the year I turned 60. And that's a big milestone, in anybody's life. It's like the end of the second act of your life, beginning of the final act. And it's a natural time for reflection and taking stock and saying, I still have significant amount of life left, hopefully, what have I learned? And so when that happened in 2018, I knew I was going to be turning 60 that June, but I was in my normal mode. I was writing the Healing Organization at that time, the book. And I had done my interviews and I was done my research and I was getting ready to write that summer. I do writing retreats. I just go away for a week at a time. And I had blocked out the entire summer for that because the book was due on October 5th. And then 4 women asked me the same question. They said, oh, we heard you're writing a book about healing. What about your own healing? And I said, well, I don't have time for that. I've got a book deadline.
I'll wait till after October. Let me get this book in, and then I can deal with my healing.
Yeah, healing can happen. They said, no, you need to make time for that. It's important. Book deadlines are flexible. I said, well, I think I'm okay. I think I need any healing. I said, no, everybody needs healing, and especially you need healing. I know that. And so I listened to them. I had the wisdom to listen to those 4 wise women, and I delayed that book by 5 months. And I said yes to many different experiences that I had previously said no to because I had a book deadline. So I said yes to a trip to the Himalayas, in the high Himalayas between India and Tibet, which is the seat of some of the deepest Buddhist wisdom in the world. We went to many monasteries. That's why I had my 60th birthday with a group. We have our Shakti leadership spiritual journeys that we take around the world, and this was one of them. I said yes to that silent retreat at Peace Village. I with a coach, and I also said yes to a trip to the Amazon rainforest with a group called the Pachamama Alliance, led by Lynn Twist. So I had interviewed Lynn for my book, and she told me I had a dream last night, and the message was, you need to be on this trip with me because you're going to learn more about healing in 10 days from the shamans and being in the rainforest than you will learn in 5 years of research. So you need to come. So I dropped everything and I said, yes, I'm coming. And that's where I had incredible experiences with real shamans deep inside the rainforest, a variety of healing modalities, including an ayahuasca experience, which I'm not sure you're familiar with or your listeners, but ayahuasca is one of the psychedelic brews that has been used by the indigenous people in the Amazon for who knows how long, thousands of years at least. And they figured out, of all the thousands of plants, if you take the roots of one and the leaves of another and you boil them together for 2 or 3 days, this incredible brew emerges that then has the power to connect you with, they call it the grandmother plant, connect you with the energy of the earth and receive wisdom, whatever you need to receive. And so I had gone there to learn about healing, and through that experience, I had incredible visions all night long. I just got so much wisdom from somewhere, that came to me. So I'm writing about all of that as well.
Raj, as you're talking about saying yes to these opportunities as they present themselves, it just makes me go full circle to what we talked about at the very beginning. Even when you don't feel like it, even when you say, I got a book deadline, I got this to do, I'm busy, to lean in with that tiny gut whisper that says you need to be in the room and the power of saying yes.
Yeah, I think an interesting dilemma because one of my problems was I was saying yes to too many things as well because I didn't have boundaries, and my default setting was yes unless I had a strong reason to say no.
Mm,
And I found myself getting overextended and overscheduled, and things filling up my calendar which I didn't care about. And so then somebody told me, you need to change the default setting. And if it's a no unless it's a hell yeah. It has to be a hell yeah or it's a no.
yeah.
Right? But that requires some degree of self-trust, self-knowledge, trusting your intuition to say what is a hell yeah, as opposed to what is just going to fritter away my time in, kind of meaningless activity.
Mm,
So I think that is so. Yeah, saying an enthusiastic yes to some things does require us to have the wisdom to say no to what doesn't matter, what is not going to serve, right? It's just going to fritter away the. I probably have like 6 or 7,000 days remaining, in this life, if I'm lucky. If I'm, meet the average number of life expectancy. So there's not a lot of time,
mm.
and just frittering it away that's the one thing that they aren't making any more of. Doesn't matter if you're a billionaire, you still have that constraint, right? So
Oh, that's so true.
yeah, we
That's
have
so
to be
true.
careful how we use them. Give me a second. I'm just going to close this door.
Yeah.
Noise happening in the other part of the house
Yeah.
now. Yeah, I'm going to podcast until 10. Okay.
Awesome. Raj, that just made me flash too. As someone who can become addicted to the yes because I love the validation from the thing. I read this the other week. If you don't authentically say yes, you say yes resentfully. And what's on the other end of that is worse than if you just would have said no to begin with.
Yeah.
I
Right.
thought,
I
wow,
I would
yeah.
I would look at my calendar and I would groan at what I needed to do that day. Say yes to this. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is an important thing too.
I love that. Raj, my friends, I am going to link where you can find all of Raj's books. Next on my list is Everybody Matters: The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family. I'm going to get that next. I'm holding up Conscious Capitalism right now. I'm going to link Raj's books in the show notes so you can go and click on them. Raj, and this is what I love so much about the work that you do, it doesn't matter where you sit on the air quote corporate ladder. This is self leadership for everybody. And the ripple of impact of it is so, so powerful. How we show up in the rooms that we're in. Where can we stay connected to you? Where can we get more of your beautiful nuggets of wisdom?
Well, my website is rajsisodia.com. So that has a lot of information, including links to podcasts and videos and all the books and so forth. So that would be a good place. I do try to post on LinkedIn frequently, so I'm trying to do more of that, of my thoughts. So that would be another place. Finding me on LinkedIn and following me there.
Gang, I'm going to link both of those in the show notes so you can just follow Raj, get on his website, see his beautiful work. Raj, I got to tell you, I am so happy that you gave yourself those breakthrough moments to become this beautiful teacher that you are, because it is so much more powerful than you know. And I want to thank you for pulling up a seat and sharing the gift that is you, all of you, as a human with our tribe. It means so much. Thank you, my friend.
Oh, you're very welcome, Megan. Thank you for inviting me, and I enjoyed our conversation.